You're listening to Change Your POV podcast, episode 46.
The real deal is applied knowledge is power. You take that with, we don't know what we don't know. And the reality is, the more we know we don't know.
Right, yeah.
Now here's where the clincher comes in, because a lot of veterans, a lot of us, take this one. I know what I know, and I don't need to know what I already know.
Welcome to Change Your POV podcast, helping you navigate transitions in your life, like entering and exiting college or the military, changing jobs or careers, and providing you with the coaching and mentorship needed to help you advance in your personal or professional life. Sometimes all you need is to change your point of view. Now, here's your host, Eddie Lazary.
All right, folks, and welcome to Change Your POV podcast. I am your host, Eddie Lazary, and today I have the privilege of sitting down with Robert McMahon. Robert is an Army veteran. His MOS back in the day was firefighter radar repair technician from 1990 to 96. With 20 years of experience as a leader in the business community, Robert has worked with small business owners. He's owned his own business, as well as navigated the obstacles of the corporate leadership models. Robert currently works with veterans as a business integration specialist. He helps small business owners, corporate executives, and veterans of the military who want to or already own their own business and are struggling to run their businesses. Robert specializes in partnerships with organizations that want to coach, guide, and motivate their individuals to be better team players and create synergy in their organization. Robert loves to bring the team together. Team building is one of his passions. As a John Maxwell certified coach, teacher, and speaker, Robert can offer you workshops, seminars, keynote speaking, and coaching, aiding your personal and professional growth through study and practical application of John's proven leadership methods. Working together, Robert will move you and or your team or organization in the desired direction to reach your goals and to be a partner that helps clarify your mission, vision, values. As a partner in your journey, Robert will help you cast your vision for personal and professional success so you can make action plans to achieve the success you desire in your life. Now, before we get into this interview with Robert, a few words from our sponsor. This week's episode is brought to you by none other than 7-Day Resume. This is a course that I created. Now, I've got to kind of go back a little bit. Last Friday, I made a mistake. I actually said that this course would be available May 1st. That's incorrect. It's tough when you're recording podcasts because oftentimes you're recording for something that's going to come out into the future. So you almost have to live in this weird, third dimension. So I misspoke last week when I said May 1st. I actually meant June 1st. So starting June 1st, 2016, if you're listening to this in the future and it's past June 1st, then it's already available. You can just check it out right now. But if you're listening to this real time, then make sure you check out 7-Day Resume. You can find that at 7dayresume.com. 7-Day Resume is a free email lesson program that teaches you everything you need to know about what your resume is for and how to create one. Once you sign up, you will be sent a new lesson every day for 7 days. What will you learn? Well, on day 1, I talked to you about understanding the resume and what it's for. Day 2, we talk about the format of the resume. On day 3, we'll learn about the elements of the resume. Day 4, resume bullet statements. That's a big one. Day 5 is the resume topography. And day 6, we're going to talk about the one thing that probably most people are most concerned about, or at least most interested in, and that's what are they looking for? The recruiter and hiring manager, what are they looking for in your resume? And finally, on day 7, we're going to talk about how to submit your resume and how to follow up. So to learn more, you can head on over to 7dayresume.com for more information, and you can pre-register or pre-sign up if you'd like. And starting June 1st, the training is going to come out. Also, you'll hear towards the end of our interview with Robert, he is putting on June 4th of 2016, he is putting on a Veteran to Business Warrior Workshop at the New Horizons Learning Center in Irving, Texas. That's located at 150 West John Carpenter Freeway. Again, that's on June 4th. He's asked me to put together a summary of this 7-day resume training for those of you that may be attending. I will have some training for you to check out. And if you want more information after that training and to sign up for the full training course, you can do that as well at 7dayresume.com. Again, it's a free course, no obligation whatsoever. And this has all been through my experience. I hope you check it out. Welcome, everyone, to Change Your POV podcast. I am your host, Eddie Lazary, and today we've got a special guest, Robert McMahon. How you doing, Robert?
I'm fat, dumb, and happy. Every day's a holiday.
That's right. Well, I'm really excited about this opportunity to speak with you today, Robert. You and I had an opportunity to talk, I think it was last weekend, and we chatted for quite a while and kind of swapped war stories and passions and interests. And it turns out we've got a lot of kind of interweaving interests and ideas and concepts. And I said, you know what? I've got to get a like-minded individual on the podcast to share with listeners. So welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Absolutely appreciate it.
So before we get into the really hard questions, why don't you just kind of take a minute and share with the audience kind of a little bit about you, where you're from, and some of your background.
All righty. Well, my name, of course, is Robert McMahon, and I spent about 6 years in the Army between 1990 and 1996, firefighter radar repair tech. I'm from a little town in Cleburne called Cleburne, Texas. I'm married to a beautiful wife, Tanya. I've got an amazing son, Brendan, who's 11 years old, and I got a daughter, Heather, who's 26. I run a company called Command Decision Coaching. I got a whole, as we were kind of talking earlier on, I got a kind of a whole list of titles. President, Chief Business Development Officer for Command Decision Coaching. I've developed a program for veteran business integration called Project Red Team. I'm the vice president of a new program that we can talk about a little bit later if you want to. It's a John Maxwell program called VetMax that we're trying to bring on board. And again, I'm a certified John Maxwell coach, trainer, and speaker. I'm a musician. I've been playing drums since I was about 5 years old. That's a little bit about me. I've got a whole bunch of pages, I think, in the chapters of the book of Robert McMahon.
That's awesome. So we'll go back in time a little bit and we'll talk about your military experience. You say you got out in 96?
Yes, sir.
That was when I joined.
Oh.
So we just passed the baton right there.
Absolutely.
So talk to us a little bit about kind of what your expectations were in the military, and particularly leading up to your departure, and how did that go for you?
Well, look, I'd like to go back just a little further because I
Sure.
started out, like I said, I was a musician when I first started. So, I got married and had twins, and I really, being a musician, I didn't really have a lot of income as a musician. So I had to really figure out what I wanted to do and where I wanted to be. So I just found myself one day, just like anybody else that was trying to look for a better opportunity. I found myself with my right hand up and, swearing my oath, but nothing really prepares you for military service. My road out was definitely, it was a rocky road, at least in my mind. When I got out, I was a hard charger. I was hula. I still today, unfortunately, I still use that word.
It's hard to get away from.
Oh man, I talked to so many veterans, and I'm sure you're the same way. We have so many militarisms that we just can't shake. I had somebody, we were talking sometime not too long ago, and we talked about transformation, and it might have been you, but anyways, I've had this conversation, and it said that we can become, and I think it was you, transform from civilian to veteran, but you can never ever transform from veteran back to a civilian.
Right. Yeah, that was our That was our kind of our premise of our conversation last week, and it's something that it took me a while to figure out when I first got out, and a lot of folks that I've run into, especially since starting Change Your POV podcast, and the folks that I've had an opportunity to speak with, they all kind of run into that thing too, right? The military does an excellent job of training us for the mission, right?
Right.
And you gotta think too that the military's mission
Mm.
is to train, equip, and deploy forces for war. That's its mission.
Yep.
Nowhere does it say that the military's mission is to prepare one to get out and be a successful civilian, right?
That's right.
So it's really up to us to take the initiative to do whatever it takes to make that transition or that evolution, or whatever you want to call it, into civilian, not the civilian life, but into the civilian world, a successful one. Because no matter how long you've been in the military, whether it's 4 years or 24 years, at the end of the day, my buddy Bennett would love that term because he uses it all the time. But at the end of the day, you will never, ever, 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 ever be a civilian again. Now, I mean, that's why the term veteran exists, is because they needed a term to describe those that have served this country and that are now no longer wearing the uniform and living in today's world because they're not in the military, but yet they're not civilians either. What are they? Well, they're veterans. And it took a long time for me to realize that it's okay that I don't fit well into the civilian. Well, I can't conform to becoming a civilian again, no matter how hard I try, because it just doesn't happen. And I finally learned to be okay with that.
That's awesome. You're absolutely correct. I fully believe the same thing that you do. I think that when I got out, I mean, I had expectations that for some reason I was going to just fit in. I was going to be good. I had all this training, I had all this experience, I've seen all these things, and when I exited out, there wasn't really, I don't know if I really took full advantage of all my exit, education. But I got out and I actually my transition or evolution as we're calling it. I had the opportunity to re-enlist for some more time in, or I had the opportunity to go work for the DoD. And with the pay structure and the I was maxed out on points. I couldn't get promoted to save my life. And I just at that time I didn't see a whole lot of career path up, and I knew that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to move up in the world, right? Or whether it was military or whether it was civilian. So the DoD came to me and said, "Hey, you're about to get out. You could come work for us. We'll move you and we'll pay you 60 grand a year." Well, 60 grand a year versus an E4 pay, that really didn't that was a no brainer, at least for me. So I got out, but again, so I was in the DoD, surrounded by military. So really there was no transformation. I still had the same mannerisms and the same people and the same things were going on. Then when I left the DoD because they closed down the base, I went to work for AT&T. Well, it was Pacific Bell back at that time. And my job was very militaristic. I flew around in helicopters. I got dropped out onto mountaintops into 20 feet worth of snow. And I worked mountaintop communications. And so it was a very militaristic unit. And then one day, Pacific Bell got merged with AT&T. Next thing I know, I found myself as a number and I was out of a job. I had to learn real quick how to reintegrate back into civilian society. And that was a tough long haul, because I'd spent the 6 years in the Army. Then I spent another almost year and some change in the DoD, and then another 7 years in a militaristic unit. So, that's, almost 15 years out, right?
Yeah.
So, I barrel-assed my way through the corporate world, thinking I knew everything, and I stepped on toes. I pushed people out of the way. I was arrogant. I was too bold. It cost me a lot of different things and a lot of different moves, trying to make it into the corporate world. And I thought education, I just need to get more education. So I went and got a master's degree in systems engineering, specializing in RF and wireless systems. And at first I got a bachelor's in electronics engineering, and then one day it kind of dawned on me that the system that I'd been chasing as a systems engineer, the system that I'd been chasing, it wasn't the electronics, it wasn't the electrical systems, it was the systems of people. And there's a book out. I don't know if you've heard of Peter Senge, Fifth Discipline. It was one of those books, it talked about the systems view of people and things, and it got me thinking. I got a master's in leadership with a specialization in project management. But again, that was that whole education thing. I've been in training my whole life. Train, train, train. If it ain't raining, we're training, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I got more degrees and than I could shake a stick at. But you know what? The corporate world still wasn't buying in on it, right? Again, just learning how to build relationships, learning how to catch up with people and figure out what the term leadership really meant. Took me quite some time. But that led me to where I am now.
So would you say that leadership and what in companies or what embodies leadership in the military is different than what is referred to or is comprised of leadership out in, say, the civilian sector?
Well, okay, so military leadership is definitely much different than what's in the civilian sector. Now, the civilian sector they're getting better. And I think the biggest thing is the civilian world has often and for long periods of time mixed the two words of management versus leadership. So you manage people, you give people, you manage things. I'm sorry, not manage people. You manage things. You can manage your checkbook. You can give tasks. You can any kind of physical things you can manage. But it takes a leader to coach, motivate, and guide people to success. Leaders move people, and leadership is an action. Leadership is an action word. It takes action, to take people from one state where they are to the success or the vision that the leader gleans. And it takes building relationships. In the military again. So let's go back to two different circumstances. So in the military, we do have leadership and followership. So some of our officers go in and they go to OCS and they learn leadership skills and a little bit much higher level leadership. And I think that really what happens with the enlisted guys is we go in and we learn followership, which leads to leadership, because in order to be a good leader, you have to be a great follower.
Right.
The difference being that in the military, we build values-based relationships, and that causes you to, the leaders to have to know and understand their people, because we train for replacement, right? I mean, when you go out in the field, and it's a tough subject to talk about sometimes, but you go out in the field and you're out on the front line and your buddy goes away. Well, who's got to pick? You got to pick it up, right? I mean, there's no you are the leader, right? And we get field promotions all the time,
Right. Oh yeah. I mean, succession planning is it's an integral part of military training at all levels, because no one person is the make or break in the military, and everybody in the military understands that, and they're okay with that because that's built in to the culture. Now you go out into the civilian world, and it's particularly in the corporate world, and now everybody has this sense of, I am irreplaceable. I am the end all be all. I've worked with folks that really held on to their knowledge close to the vest because they were scared to give it up, because of fear for loss of job or importance or value.
Well, you said it best just in your example. I am. I am. And so it's an I culture versus a we culture. And that's the values-based relationships of the military versus the circumstantial based relationship of the civilian world. So, and there's a lot of civilian corporations that are getting better at building relationships and building values, but they still, there's still those pockets. I go to work with this. It's circumstantial. I go to work with this guy, and he doesn't know me, and I don't know him, and we do a job together. It's a circumstance. I get my paycheck, And a perfect example. My wife, she worked for a recruiting company, a company that they all they did was help people get jobs. So you would think, oh wow, that's what a great thing, help people get jobs. But the worst thing about it was that the two recruiters, you could sit right next to each other, and they were in competition with each other. I mean, they
Mm.
were in competition with each other. So infighting and just bad relationships, bad blood. I mean, and that happens. That kind of business happens all the time.
It does. Unfortunately, it does. In the mind of Robert, what in your opinion defines success, or how would you define success?
That's for me. That's easy. I mean, to me, I define success by the relationships you build. It's not, a lot of people think that it's, your wealth and it's your the money and how many toys you have. I mean, yeah, sure, the toys are nice. I'd love to have a brand new Harley sitting outside. I'd love to have that, but to me, success is about the relationships you build because you just can't replace them. I mean, you can't replace the relationships. I mean,
Mm.
it's the more people that you know and the more people that you can reach and the more people that you can help. You know, I don't know, I don't know about your spirituality, but I follow a God, and for me, that if I could just touch one person's heart in any way, shape, or form, then I believe that I've had a great day in
Mm-hmm.
any way, shape, or form. And if and my mission is to help veterans, and if I can help one veteran get from where he is now to where he wants to go, then for me that's a success, and build a relationship along the way.
Yeah, and that's so important too, because I've talked with veterans and I've said, and I've talked, whether it be through social media or on the phone directly, and I've made the recommendation to just reach out and help, other veterans. And the advice that I give are to those that are struggling themselves, those that are, feeling a little depressed or, feel disconnected, not part of the unit or part of the team anymore. And I recommend to them to reach out, find somebody else, reach out and help them because, um, it's very difficult to be sad when you're being helpful, right? And some people say, well, I don't know how to help people because I don't know anything about PTSD because that seems to be a big problem these days. And I'm like, you don't have to know anything about being a psychologist or know anything about PTSD or traumatic brain injury. All you have to do is help with what you can, with what you know. Like, I give an example. If you are perhaps you prepare taxes as a profession. Reach out to a veteran and offer to help them do their taxes. If you are a dog groomer at a pet store and you know a veteran that has a pet, offer to groom their pet. I mean, it really can be anything. It can be as simple as going to, the grocery or going to the gas station in the morning on your way to work and buying the person behind you a cup of coffee. I mean, it's really that simple. Find ways to reach out, extend your hand, and offer some charity, offer some gratitude, offer some help. So, talk to us a little bit about command decision coaching. What is that, and how did that come to be?
Well, it came basically out of the story. I've over the years I've mentored countless guys into different roles in their careers, and I had some friends that said, "Hey, you should probably go into coaching." And I've got my just about my best friend in the world. He's a Marine and he lives out in California. I'll do a shameless plug on him, Mike Shea. But he's always been kind of my accountability partner, and I think it's important that you always have somebody to keep pushing you and stretching you and growing you. And so Mike and I one day I flew out to California, and we had our families out there, and we just started noodling together, putting our heads together, and decided that we were going to open a coaching business, because we seemed to be good at helping people and problem solving, that kind of stuff, and building relationships. And through trial and error, I mean, he kind of went one way, and then I found the John Maxwell team, and I really dove into all the things that John Maxwell had to offer, and that's how I became a certified, John Maxwell coach, trainer, and speaker. And then in the John Maxwell group, I got myself a mentor. His name is Mark Finner, and he runs a company called Rise Performance Group out here in Irving. And he was on John's Presidential Action Committee. And so I reached out to him, and him and I connect quite regularly. And he kind of just pointed me in the direction. He said, "Well, hey, I mean, you've got this thing. You're a veteran, and there's a lot of really good things that you could, coach veterans on. You need to figure out how to build your business and just focus in on veterans." And so I just immediately went to work, and I developed a program called Project Red Team. And Project Red Team that's my program that I go into the business, and I teach the business how to work with veterans. And then I also teach the business, their veterans, how to to realign themselves and pick themselves up and get the company's mission, vision, and value.
Yeah. So through your work with Project Red Team, you mentioned going into the companies,
Mhm.
and essentially what I'm hearing is you're kind of engineering the gap or the bridge, if you will, between that corporation and the veteran. What in your experience, what's been the common thread across the board that you found that kind of leads to why one doesn't quite understand the other?
Oh wow, it's definitely a communication barrier. I mean, when I do bridge the gap, and that's the Project Red Team has 5 tenets, and the first tenet is called bridge the gap. So when we do bridge the gap, we do kind of a communication. We do a kind of we get the business on one side and the veterans kind of on the other, and it really comes down to a communication barrier breakdown. You have so the business expects, they know they understand, the value of a veteran in most cases. They understand, but kind of like what you were saying earlier on, they most of the time put the onus on the veteran to either get it or get out. That's the philosophy. But if we can help the business not have as big a turnover rate, and to hone in on those veteran skills and bridge the communication barrier, it's it definitely helps the business out. And what I find most of the time is that kind of three areas that veterans fall in. This is generalized just based on my experience, right? Is that
Hmm.
that there's a small gray area where they're the veterans that are successful, that they come out, they use the skills that the military have given them, and they do the right things. They fall into the places where they need to fall into, and they make the connections that they need to make, and things for those veterans are very good. But then you have the left and you have the right, and I don't mean left like as in Democrat, and right as in the Republicans. I mean, so on the left hand side, you have guys like me. We were arrogant, we were a little bold. We have I call it I call it the too much knowledge myth, right? So my 4 tenets here on knowledge are, knowledge is power. That's, to me, that's a myth. The real deal is applied knowledge is power. You take that with we don't know what we don't know. And the reality is the more we know, the more we know we don't know.
Right. Yep.
Now here's where the clincher comes in, because a lot of veterans, a lot of us take this one. I know what I know, and I don't need to know what I already know. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not because we're really trying to be arrogant, but we are. We were trained to be confident, to be cool, to adapt, to overcome, to achieve. And that's what we were trained for. We were trained that way. And we come out, barrel assing through and doing that. So that's the
Mm-hmm.
one side. So there are a lot of us that are that way. And then you go to the other side. And the other side is the guys that they regress. They're the guy that'll sit in front of their computer, and inside their head they'll curse the supervisors because they're sitting there and they don't speak up, and they say, well, you don't know where I've been, you don't know what I've done, you don't know how I feel, you're not building relationships with me. And again, it turns out to in that inward self, and you're not building relationships with me, so I'm not going to give any more or any less than I'm giving now. I'll just wait till I can, I'll find an opportunity, or I can go home and I'll just regress some more. And so it takes somebody to recognize that and pull the guys out of that, pull us
Mm.
out. If you don't have a coach, if you don't have a mentor, if you don't have somebody stretching you, then you're going to be complacent. You're going to be. I mean, let's go back to. I mean, let's go back to how we were trained, right? So you came in, went into the military a knucklebone. I don't care who you were. Everybody. We all went into the military knucklebones because they broke us down and told us we were knucklebones, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you had drill sergeants that wore you down and built you back up. That training, that experience, it just carries on with you.
So let's talk. So John Maxwell.
Uh-huh.
So who's John Maxwell to you, and how did you get involved with that?
Well, okay, so I got involved because I got an email once that said, "Hey, join John's team." But I learned about John Maxwell because I've got a master's in leadership, and there was a lot of study about a lot of different leaders throughout my leadership course. Some very good leaders, probably guys you never heard of. Peter Songay, let's see. Well, I did a report on Colin Powell. I love General Powell. Just a whole bunch of different leaders. So when I got the email, I was like, wow. I mean, he's actually got a team. So I called in and investigated. But John is so he's got 102 books. He's got we're represented in about 155 countries. I think there's close to 9,000 internationally, 9,000 John Maxwell certified coach trainers and speakers. He's 7 years in a running. He's been the #1 leadership guru in the world, again, for 7 years running. Officially, he's written more information on the subject of leadership than anybody in history. He'll tell you, it's as he talks, he'll tell you that everything that he started out with just came straight from the Bible, is where he got his leadership information from. So, and of course, he's Bill Hybels, Jim Rohn, all those greats, Tony Robbins, all those greats. He's kind of in that same realm.
So John is probably hands down, arguably, the de facto subject matter expert on leadership. Would you agree?
Yes, sir. I do have an exception to that. Can I tell you a quick story?
Sure.
So we're out in Orlando. I guess it's been almost a month now. Yeah, actually, it has been a month now. And before I went out, Mark Fenner said, "Hey, before you go out there, you need to have a veteran question ready so you can ask John, and then it'll help your business." It's like, that's kind of cool. So I thought up a good question, what I thought was a good question, and I got out to Orlando, and it came to the question and answer time. Now again, I just gave you the credentials, 102 books, 7-time, #1 guru in the world, all this other stuff, and people are raising their hands to ask questions. There's a couple of thousand people, 2,000 people in this room, and people are raising their hands, and I'm jumping up to raise my hand to get my question answered. And I probably went through 10, 15 people, I don't know. And he was asking answering these questions right off the cuff. They'd say, hey, they'd ask their question, and he'd give them a good, 3 to 5 minute dissertation. And I was like, wow, really good answers. So I got a little discouraged, and I just stopped sitting up. And the lady behind me said, did you give up? And I said, yeah. There's 200 people here trying to get their stinking questions asked. I'm not going to ask mine. And so she said, well, what was your question? Now, this doesn't have a whole lot to do with the story, but so I just handed her my phone that had the question on it, but not realizing that my phone had, like $250 in it, had all my credit cards, had, social security, everything in the whole, and not to mention it was on and not locked. So I just handed it to her like she was, like she was my mother. So talk about OPSEC, right?
Yeah.
So I handed it to her, and I'm sitting there, I'm listening to these answers, few more folks that came back, and then I realized, oh crud, my phone is gone. Where's my phone? So I turned around to look at her, and she says, you really need to ask your question. And I was like, okay, I'll ask my question. And then, because she was really adamant that I asked my question. So I started to raise my hand again, and this guy, Pete, he jumped up and he asked a question, but his question had to do with military leadership and how John sees military leadership, and it didn't have anything to do with veterans. And I was like, golly, this guy's going to ask my question and John's going to answer it, but it really didn't have anything to do with it. And then when Pete got finished answering, sat down and John got finished answering his question, I don't know, I stood up and I said, hoo-ah! I got another follow-up question. And, and the whole place just stopped, and all the eyes, all on me, right? And, 2,000 people looking over at this table. But see, what I didn't realize was it wasn't just me. My table and the 4 tables around me all stood up, and there was this, he's got a question. He's got a question.
Wow.
So, I said, John, my name's Robert McMahon, United States Army veteran, and I'd just like to know from your perspective, what is the greatest challenge that we face at reintegrating our veterans back into society? And what can we as John Maxwell team members do to help facilitate that success? Yeah, that was a dramatic pause, because that's exactly what happened to him. So I mean, not to take away from John, because John is, he's such an amazing, dramatic, intelligent. Again, he's just an amazing, larger than life personality. But when you stump John, there's a problem. And he said, and he looked at me and he said, Robert, I don't know. I'm not a veteran. But what I can tell you is that we don't do enough, and that somebody needs to do something. And then he gave, just a few more minutes of his perspective on veterans. And then the next thing you know, I've got one of our, the president of our VetMax group. He's got his business card on my table, and Albert Winks and I are kind of been working together. And the next thing you know, I got my treasurer, Alex Wyde. He's online. I think I sent a little bit of link to them as well from you. Anyways, so I was digressing. Through the Orlando experience, we were doing training, coach, speaking, coaching training, speaking training, training. And then in between that, it was like I'd sit down and, oh, Colonel Don Gleason. Oh, hi, how are you doing? Oh, great. And then Colonel Nate Hunsinger. Oh, great to meet you. And then it was just all these people just came out of the woodwork, and we just started building a kind of a John Maxwell veteran organization. And This whole thing that I'm telling you is all in the works. We're still in the infantile phases of this, and I'm mentioning it because I believe that it's going to go somewhere. I believe that if anybody can get behind it, the number one leadership guru in the world can get behind it and figure out a way for us to be those accountability partners and those for our veterans.
Mhm.
So again, I don't want to give too much away. We're still in the works. We're really trying to figure out things. We've got I think we've got our organizational structure down. We're still struggling about funding, whether or not the organization is going to go. If we're going to actually be an LLC type organization, if we're going to be a 501(c) organization, how are we going to get money? How are we going to pay for this? Are we going to get large corporate donations? Or can we partner with the VA? Can we partner with the DoD? Can we get in on the ground floor with the Wounded Warriors and the TABS program? I mean, there's so many different things that we really want to and can do, but it's going to take a lot of work and a lot of folks to get there. And so the deal is we're looking for folks to help us. Looking for it's a John Maxwell program, but that doesn't mean we can't make partners somewhere. So
Right. And that's so encouraging. And I will tell you too, Robert, that and it was evident by the amount of veterans that kind of came out of the woodwork and approached you after that. They heard your question and they heard the answer, and the answer was very clear. I'm sure it echoed through the room, and that is there's a need and it needs filled, right? And in terms of your initiative and what you got going on, I'm a firm believer that if you're servicing the need, all of that other stuff that you mentioned will fall into place. It just will.
yeah.
Because there's so many organizations out there that are servicing other needs. We've got plenty of organizations that bring community. We've got other organizations that bring, education to PTSD and traumatic brain injury. We've got all kinds of funding initiatives for building veterans new homes and reintegrating. But you know what? There's a huge gap when it comes to veterans and leadership because, and I speak from experience here, just because I did 10 years in the Army, I was a non-commissioned officer. I got out as a staff sergeant, senior squad leader. I served some time as an acting platoon sergeant, and I went to PLDC and I went to BNOC and all these other trainings. I went to Scout Leaders course at Fort Knox, right? So I had a lot of leadership training and a lot of leadership experience, and I was a good military leader. And then I get out of the military and I'm thinking, this is easy. This is a cakewalk, right? If I can if I can lead nine men on the streets of Baghdad in combat, this is cakewalk. And I get into a leadership role in the corporate world and realize that I'm not really very good at this. And I couldn't figure out why I wasn't very good at this. I mean, I was still doing everything I did before. I still knew everything that I knew before. I was implementing everything, but it wasn't working. And it's because it's a different style of leadership that's required. It's a different approach that's needed. And I didn't have the secret sauce, and I couldn't figure it out. And it took actually a culmination of seasoned veterans and some very patient civilians to kind of help me and work through that. And if your organization can find a way to spread that message and to field that need, you're going to have a very successful company.
That's the direction we're trying to take.
That's awesome. All right. Well, one final question, and then I will wrap up with your contact information so everybody can figure out how they can contact and get a hold of you and follow you and what you got going on. But as you know, this show is called Change Your POV, which is point of view. Give us an instance or a time when you thought something one way, but an event or occurrence of something happened that forced you to change your point of view. What was it, and what did you learn from that experience?
Well, okay. Um, So maybe it has to do with attitude, changing my attitude. So I do, wow, but which one?
Hmm.
Which change in my attitude? Um, uh, okay, well let's just so here just not too long ago, I'll use a more recent one then. Um, so I was around a bunch of veterans, and I love hearing their stories, right? And this kind of goes back to something that we kind of talked about a little bit ago, and I still have to keep reminding myself of this. Um, you get around, the guys that have been in Baghdad, and they've been in Afghanistan. I mean, I guess I was in Korea for 18 months during Desert Storm. So, the big deal for me, if they would have called me to go over to the sand pit, I'd have gone. But I got stuck in Korea for 18 months. So, but I listened to those guys. And as a veteran, sometimes I think, man, uh, I'm just an inferior. I'm not a very good veteran. I'm not a very good guy. I mean, these guys are the heroes, the guys that were out there, walking and making things happen. They're the real heroes. They're doing that. And sometimes it's confidence. It's we let our negative self-talk. Even John Maxwell, he gets negative. He's probably one of the most positive men I know, and he gets negative self-talk. And so for me, I have to realize that the best thing I can do is listen to those stories and add value to those folks that were there, and not let that bring me down. And I know there's other guys that are out there that are the same way. They were in a support organization. They were, working in the office or whatever. But the bottom line is we all serve. We're all brothers in arms. And I think the biggest thing for me is to realize that negative self-talk sometime it can bring you down. It'll bring you down and put bad things in your head that definitely shouldn't be there. So you have to work real hard to recognize that when you're getting in the down in the dumps to bring yourself out. And again, so that goes back to having somebody to go back and talk to. When you get around people that you think you're not going to be able to build relationships with, you need somebody that's gonna kick you in the butt and straighten you up and say, hey, dude, you matter.
Mm.
Quit acting like you suck, and you matter. And I don't know if that totally answered your question, but that's the
No,
thing that I
no,
that I
that's
thought of.
no, that's awesome. And I've talked with veterans that didn't deploy to Iraq or Afghanistan. It was before their time, and some of them feel like like they're a lesser veteran, or that their contribution to their service wasn't as great as those that served in combat. And I will tell you that. Don't if it's just a matter of circumstance. It's not that anybody wouldn't have gone if been asked. It's just they were in service at a point in time when there fortunately wasn't conflict. And that doesn't make you any less of a veteran. The fact that you raised your right hand and volunteered to do whatever you had to do to train and prepare and to be ready for that call whenever it may have come, that in and of itself is an honorable cause and earns you the right to be a distinguished veteran. And, at the end of the day, less than 1% of the United States population even qualify for the ability to raise your right hand, and even a less percentage than that actually do. So, those that have, and those that have served, and those that will in the future, you have all earned as veterans the right and privilege to wear this nation's cloth, on our caskets during our final day. And nothing can ever take that away. No combat, no lack of combat, no whatever it is. So you're right. That self negative talk just put it away, put it in a locker somewhere, and tame it when it comes out to rear its ugly head.
Absolutely. Got to chop the head off that snake, let me tell you.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Hey, thanks, Robert. Man, it's been a pleasure and a privilege to have you on the show. I love everything that you've got going on. I would love to keep in touch with you and perhaps even have you on a little bit later down the road to kind of check back in with the audience, let everybody know kind of how you're doing. Where can people go to find more about you and what you've got going on?
Well, you can go to www.commanddecisioncoaching.com. And then you could go to www.projectredteam.org, both of those. And, to be honest with you, I don't even mind. I don't know how you feel about it. I don't mind sharing my phone number if folks want to just pick up the phone and give me a call.
That's up to you.
Yeah, 940-395-9990. And I do have one selfless plug, if you don't mind.
Don't mind.
Got on June 4th, I'm partnering with the New Horizons Learning Center over in Irving, Texas. And we're going to do a veteran to business warrior workshop, and that's at 150 West John Carpenter Freeway in Irving, Texas. It's still in the developing, kind of evolving stages, but we're going to have some of the state of the industry discussions. We're going to have some resume writing courses. We're going to bring in one or two veteran entrepreneur speakers. I'm going to talk about Project Red Team and VetMax, and again, it's still kind of evolving. We're going to see how big we can make this thing. So that's pretty much it.
That's awesome. Very cool. I'll have all that included in there. Thanks so much, Robert, for coming on. I appreciate it.
Oh man, it was definitely a pleasure. I enjoyed speaking to you more than you know, and I look forward to a long, healthy relationship.
Absolutely.
All right.
You are now officially a member of the Change Your POV squad, and you are in my network forever, whether you like it or not.
I guess I feel absolutely blessed.
Awesome. All right, folks, that'll do it for this show. You can find all of the show notes and everything we talked about over at changeyourpov.com/episode 46. Never miss an episode. Hit subscribe on your podcast player of choice. We have a lot more great content headed your way. If you want to reach out to me directly, you can email me at eddie@changeyourpov.com. I would love to hear from you. Until next time.
Thanks for listening to Change Your POV podcast with Eddie Lazary. Check out more content by going to changeyourpov.com. And remember, your ability and willingness to change your point of view will open doors of opportunity.